has affected my family, both my extended family as well as my nuclear family. So, I mean, not the family I grew up in, to be clear. So it's something I've always cared about. Living where I live in Silicon Valley in California, I've witnessed a lot of like the pressures that are put on young people and the kind of struggles that they face in trying to meet expectations and live up to the pressures that they are under. And so that was a big inspiration. There's a whole slew of suicides in Silicon Valley, a cluster of 14 in 1 year. And that was, shocking to everybody. And right before I started writing the script, there was a girl who jumped off the overpass of one of the highways. And I knew her, actually. I mean, I didn't know her very well, but she was someone who was an acquaintance. So it was really, it was really shocking for most people what happened there. And so that really, inspired me to start writing the story.
Suchi, you are playing Rupa, the mother of Maya, who commits suicide because of depression.
Yes.
You are a mother in real life. You've got a 10-year-old daughter. When you were working on a subject like this, were you picking up bits and bits from your own life and adding it to Rupa?
Well, I was just hoping that something like that would not happen in my life and in my daughter's life, frankly speaking. Yes, my daughter is 10 years old, and I do see, the pressure that causes kids to go through, depression or, isolation, etc. I see it in our everyday life as well. I mean, she's in the 5th standard, but this need to perform, Mama, I need to get good marks, I want you to be proud of me. And I said, where does all of this come from? I'm happy even if if you don't get good marks, it's all right, but they feel the pressure from such a young age. So when this script came up and everything, of course, it did touch a chord. I've not luckily not had depression, but my grandmother, my mother's side of the family has suffered through it, and I've seen it from a young age onwards, what it does to people. So I knew about it per se, but when the film came up, I have to say, I was the only thing I was hoping and praying is that it would never happen to my daughter. So it really helped me as far as waking up and smelling the coffee and seeing, because we all are in nuclear families. I'm part of a nuclear family as well. And to know what not to do, to prevent it from actually happening in my family.
Pooja, you've had quite a journey in your life. You've been vocal about every aspect of your journey as well, which I really admire. Have you ever gone through, like Suchi was just saying now about performance pressure? I have to excel in my films. I've got to excel in every department, which at one point of time made you wake up and say, I'm not happy with life because of performance pressure. Have you gone through that?
I've gone through more than performance pressure. First of all, I'm sorry I'm sounding overtly husky today, but I just am recovering from swine flu.
You're sounding more baser than I am.
Well, maybe I am more base than you are, darling. But anyway, that's not the point here. The thing is that I think that when I first became a director with a film called Pap, my father, I remember, wrote me a letter on the day of the release, and he said to me, he said, well, Pooja, while, this day for you might be the most monumental day, you're releasing a film as a director, and for me as a father, I kind of oscillate between the dread of you failing and the hope of you succeeding. For the world, this is just another day. And there are more people out there in Bollywood who would want to see you fail than want to see you succeed. And if you're surprised by that, then which world have you been living in? This is Planet Bollywood, darling. And there is no gratitude in this business. So there's an illusion in people's heads out there that filmmaking, acting, the arts is a place which is kind of full of highs and, events like this where we sit in air-conditioned rooms and we're kind of looking pretty. It's a journey that is just laced with humiliation, frustration, self-doubt. You have to constantly tell yourself that you're worthy because everybody around you is making you feel unworthy. I mean, when we were acting back in the day, when we were modeling, Suchi, me and Suchi go back a really long way, we didn't have the pressure of social media. But we still felt so pressurized by society to be the women that we were. And we were born to mothers and fathers who allowed us to be us. But not everyone has that privilege. And I'm just so glad to be here on this day, sitting with these women to kind of make a film that deals with depression, to deals with things that people don't want to talk about, is such a brave act. And I applaud you for that. Because, I mean, it takes a lot to put your money where your mouth is and your belief. And, you know, people say, but, you know, you guys don't make relevant films. I'm like, you don't want to go and do you really want to watch our relevant films? And somehow it's left to us filmmakers and to us artists to maybe really steer the world towards, like what you said earlier, we've lost our moral compass. We don't share enough anymore. We might be having dinner in the same house on the same table, but we don't know what's passing through the other person's head. So pressure is there. Pressure is there on you from the time you're born into the world. That's if you make it into the world as a woman, either you're kind of, your life is just annihilated before you kind of even make it out, because I mean, they prefer a male heir. And then society is trying to kill your spirit. And then you enter a business where you're dissected constantly for how you sound, how you don't sound, the standards of the world. And we buy into it and we fall for it. And this obsession with showing this together face, this happy face, you know, I'm okay. I'm not okay. It's such a relief to hear people say that, I'm not okay. You know, we don't ask for help and we don't hear each other's silences enough. Which is why they say to know each other intimately is to know each other's tragedy. You know, if I don't know your tragedy, I don't know you. That when I share with you what your fears are, is when I know you, and we live in a world where we're comfortable sharing bodies. You know, we're comfortable sharing drugs, but we don't share each other's fears with each other. We don't share vulnerabilities. And for us in the artistic world, it's a dichotomy, because if we lose our vulnerability, and if we lose the accessibility we have to our emotions, then we stop being artists of the kind the world wants to applaud. But at the same time, you've got to go out into the world and be in control and show your together face and not be sensitive and not feel anything. So we're constantly being forced to lead this kind of schizophrenic existence. To find that balance, I think, is tough. But I think the fact that we're here and we're talking about this is the greatest kind of step forward, because you can only confront something when you can acknowledge it. I confronted that I had an alcohol problem by acknowledging I had an alcohol problem. I was deeply depressed. And I thought that the balm that I was using, that was alcohol, was actually kind of going to take that kind of pain away. It made it worse. And until that time, I could actually recognize that about me. I couldn't step away from that. So we all have our ways. Some people deal with depression with workaholic, you know, with work. And as long as you're a workaholic and you're making money for somebody, they don't care about you. But we're all addicts in a way. For some people it's work, for some people it's sex, for some people it's drugs, for some people it's money, for some people it's power, for some people it's fame. So we live in a high-stress world. We have tremendous pressure. We feel increasingly more and more alone. We are on Facebook with each other, Twitter with each other, liking each other's posts. Where do we reach out to each other? It's a virtual world. I mean, my friend Subhash, our old friend Subhash K. Jha, we used to keep telling him, yeah, you have a virtual relationship with people. You're not sitting in front of people na, and touching and smelling them. Where are we touching and feeling each other? My father supposedly left home when I was a little girl. According to the world, I come from a broken home. But my father never left home. It was a matter of geography. So you can be in the same household with a supposed functional family, but that family can be the most dysfunctional family. And the supposed dysfunctional family can be the most functional family. It's about being there for each other, hearing each other. जो हम छुपाते हैं ना मेरे दोस्त, वो हम होते हैं. We are what we hide. And how many of us are really saying what we feel? How many of us are really having a real conversation? So which is why I brought along a little letter, and if the time permits, I would like Suchi to read it. My younger sister, Shaheen, suffers from depression. She realized that when she was 13 years old. And, you know, we confuse sadness for depression, melancholy for depression. Hers is a crippling depression where वो दिनों के लिए मतलब उठ नहीं सकती है. My father put it beautifully. He said she wakes up in the desert every day and waits for spring, you know. So when you wake up in that wasteland emotionally, and it's very easy for people to say, you know, when Jia Khan committed suicide, I remember Alia and Shaheen and my father lived right opposite them. And Alia came back, she was mortified. She said, what's going on? And we're like, you know, this young girl has killed herself. We were all very upset. We knew Jia. And me and Shaheen were talking about suicide. And she said, have you ever contemplated suicide? So I said, of course I've contemplated suicide. I think every wise or sensitive person at some point has thought that, what if I just kill myself? What if I do? And Shaheen said, yeah, even I have. Alia was mortified. Alia was like, what's going on? Both my sisters have contemplated suicide. What kind of house am I living in? You know what I mean? But the point is that if you can say these things, you generally don't go and pull the plug. It's when you can't talk. It's like, why is Alcoholics Anonymous popular? Because most people don't have anyone to talk to. So the stigma of depression, the stigma of mental health, the stigma of alcoholism has to go. I remember many years ago, there was a young man who kind of went in with a sickle or just slashed a young girl from the northeast at Gateway of India. Ironically, it was my wedding anniversary and me and Munna were going to Sri Lanka where the foreign minister was shot. So there was curfew. So everyone's like, Sri Lanka mat jao yaar, bahut dangerous hai. I land in Sri Lanka and I hear about an incident in Gateway of India in broad daylight. Someone's gone and hacked a girl to death. Why? Because he was suffering from depression. And हम बहुत आसानी से एक दूसरे को पागल बोल देते हैं. Like even when my father made a movie called Arth, there was a scene where Smita Patil's mother and a doctor approached Shabana Azmi. And there was a very senior actor, Om Shivpuri, who had come at that point. And my father said, you're supposed to say in dialogue that she's suffering from paranoia, schizophrenic paranoia. So he said, ये क्या बुलवा रहा है यार, बोल दो ना पागल है. So my father said, नहीं, पागल नहीं. This is paranoid schizophrenia. There's a difference. So you see, we kind of tend to sweep things into one bracket, and to simplify it, and then I will not speak anymore, we just need to share more, talk more, reach out and hold each other's hand more. We live in a time where we don't have a problem, like I say, we share bodies, we don't form connections, we're frightened of bearing our soul. You can deal with my naked body, you can't deal with my bare soul. That's the problem with the world. And I don't want part of that world. And if I'm supposed to be called mad, I would rather be mad with my truth, as Nietzsche said, than be sane with your lies. So that's where I am. But to finish off, congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. We need more work like this.
Thank you.
Suchitra, she just mentioned a letter which Shaheen had written.
Yes.
You have it with you. I'd
do,
love you
yes.
to read it for us. And very thoughtful of Pooja to get it along with us. So thank you so much.
I'm just riding off my sister's pain. See, that's what I'm saying. You know, my father always says, he says, like, you know, the pearl forms because somebody is in great distress and the world calls it art then.
So this is an article that Shaheen had written. When I woke up last week, I didn't feel quite normal. I felt it almost as soon as I opened my eyes. I wanted to get out of bed, but I found myself unable to move. As the minutes wore on and I lay motionless in bed, I began to notice a dark, heavy feeling that inexplicably had not been there since the night before. I felt weighed down and empty all at once, sad and somehow devoid of all emotion. Negative, toxic thoughts began to flood my mind like poison, and they eventually, over the course of the day, distorted everything good in my life to such an extent that I could no longer see good or even believe it existed. Like always, I scanned my mind for a reason, a trigger, anything that could explain why I was feeling this way. I found nothing. Life was for all purposes, good, even great. But here I was, feeling like my whole world was coming crashing down and I had nowhere to go to stop from being crushed beneath it. This time, this feeling lasted a week. The first time I felt it, I was a couple of months away from my 13th birthday. This can't be normal, I remember thinking to myself. I'd recently put on a lot of weight, and the kids in my class had started making fun of me. I attributed the feeling to the fact that I didn't like being made fun of, and the logical solution emerged. Lose the weight, lose the feeling. Over the next 3 months, I dangerously but diligently ate close to nothing. And unsurprisingly, by the time my 13th birthday rolled around, I had lost all the weight, and no one was making fun of me anymore. But want to know a little secret? That feeling, that dark, niggling, unpleasant feeling stayed firmly put. That's where my journey with depression began. I now have about 7 to 10 episodes a year, each ranging between 3 to 10 days. There also began a cycle of self-inflicted punishment in the hope that fixing my external world would eventually help fix my internal one. It's an idea I'm still struggling to unlearn. For those who haven't experienced depression firsthand, the idea is difficult to grasp. There is the tendency to confuse depression with sadness. Sadness is a normal human emotion. We have all felt sad and we will all feel sad again. Feelings of sadness are usually triggered by an upsetting event or problem. Once the problem has resolved itself or the event has passed, we usually feel better and the negative emotion passes. Depression is entirely different. It needs no trigger, and sadness is just one of its many symptoms. As Stephen Fry once said, depression isn't a straightforward response to a bad situation. Depression just is, like the weather. Everyone with depression experiences it differently. We all suffer in different ways. The one thing that I found remains constant, however, is the feeling that you are entirely alone. Depression is absolute in its isolation. It forces upon you a blackness and loneliness which, ironically, without help, you are usually powerless to escape. For me, it has brought with it a whole host of issues. Along with bouts of crippling sadness, I also live with insomnia, anxiety, and occasional panic attacks. My insomnia kicked in when I was 16 years old, and no matter how hard I tried or how tired I was, I could never sleep. To this day, going 36 hours without even a wink of sleep is sometimes routine for me. As my symptoms persisted and I took to rarely leaving my bedroom, my family began to notice that something was very wrong. They realized that when I didn't move, it wasn't because I was being a sullen, lazy teenager. It was because I couldn't move. Coming to this understanding was hardest on my mother, who had to watch me lock myself away for years without knowing why. While being depressed is difficult, loving someone who is depressed isn't easy either. It calls for immense patience, kindness, and understanding. As soon as the penny dropped and my mother realized what was going on, she found me a therapist and ensured I learned how to help myself. We should all be so lucky. Last week, while in the throes of a depressive episode, I decided to post about it on Instagram. It wasn't an announcement or a confession, because I've never hidden this facet of my personality, but I recognized that talking about it was a responsibility I had to myself. We spend hours showcasing frivolous, often inaccurate details of our lives, but somehow never talk about the things that matter, who we are and how we feel. When you deny your own personal depression, you deny everyone's depression. You deny the very existence of depression, and you perpetuate the belief that it's something that needs concealing. You perpetuate the shame and suffering of so many that live with it. As a teenager, I believed something was wrong with me. I was ashamed of my inability to be joyful and positive while others could. Life had afforded me endless opportunity and luxury, and I felt like I was being ungrateful by being sad. I, like countless others, bought into the myth that being depressed was a luxury. Today, I feel ashamed of ever being ashamed. It took me years to learn that the way I felt stood independent of my circumstances. I couldn't help the way I was feeling, and I still can't. The only thing I can do is cultivate an awareness of my condition in myself and those around me, and use the tools available to me to help keep me balanced. I no longer believe that there's something wrong with me. All our lives we confine and box ourselves into other people's definitions of normal. We all have our own personal normal, and what is normal for me might not be normal for someone else. The truth of my life just happens to be that my normal takes a little bit more work, care, and the occasional sedative. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Pooja. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pooja. Thank you so much.
I just felt that it's somebody who's in that fire, you know. So it was something that was worth sharing.
Yeah, I think that was beautifully written, and a lot of what you say. When I was writing the script, I did a lot of research on depression, just because I wanted to be very realistic.
Right.
And this could be a letter Maya would write, literally.
Yeah.
I mean, the character it encompasses all the feelings the character is feeling, and the dysfunction of the family, the expectations, the pressures on her. I think what you were talking about when you're as a star, you know, how visible and public your struggles are. I think a lot of people, even the common average person, has the same struggles. I think yours are just more amplified. So
it's amplified. I mean, and for example, I mean, to me,
Pooja, mic, please.
to me, it never bothered me whether I never took myself seriously on the basis of a film being a hit. So I didn't take myself unseriously when my film was a flop. I mean, how I looked didn't matter. I mean, I discovered through the world that apparently I was an attractive woman. I didn't feel that attractive growing up. But what amazes me is at the age of 45, I sometimes bump into people in an elevator who've seen Dil Hai Ke Manta Nahi when I was 19 and they were 19. And they meet me and obviously seeing me triggers of some kind of adolescent kind of feeling that they've had when they've held their girlfriend or boyfriend's hand in that theater for the first time. And then they look at me and they're like, आप तो बहुत बदल गए. तो मैं बोलती हूँ कि आप भी बदले होंगे अगर आप ही उस उम्र के थे. हाँ हम तो बदले मगर आप कैसे बदले? So I'm like, that was your fantasy, this is life, deal with it, you know what I mean? So anybody who was probably took themselves very seriously on the basis of how they looked only would have probably been a basket case. But when people ask me, I mean, for example, I celebrate each stretch mark or each line that appears in my face, but that's life imprinting its kind of mark on me. But that's the way I think, and I'm not against anybody who decides to go for surgery. But I'm just saying is that this is what you're dealing with constantly. So you need to know who you are if you want to be. That's why they say showbiz is not for sissies to begin with.